Welcome back, everyone, to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. We just wrapped up two segments on going to college with executive functioning disorder, ADD, ADHD, maybe without a diagnosis. And there were some really great tips there. So if you're just joining us, go back and listen to the early going. But now we're going to talk about insurance. And while insurance may not be the most exciting topic for any given day, it's important stuff. And my colleague and former financial aid officer at Mayo Clinic College of Medicine, Michelle Smoley, is here, and she is exciting. So we're going to make it exciting. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
All right, so we're talking about insurance, and I will confess, as I pulled this topic up and was looking at the questions, I was thinking to myself, I don't have any insurance for my son who's in college. So I'm actually very interested to hear perhaps what I maybe should have considered doing. And it's not too late. He's got 3 years left. So really what we're talking about is what kind of insurance should you consider for college? And I guess my first question to you is, why should college students consider or think about having insurance?
It's definitely something young adults don't think about. I myself, my kids went to school about 10 years ago. And so I really didn't think about, oh, I should look at insurance when they live in the dorm. So I think insurance is important because, as we know, it helps protect income and assets. And college students are really, they're exposed to risky situations every day, whether they think about it or not. And so it is important to think about the various types of insurance, especially with the way society is today. And like I said, a lot of times the young adults don't think about the repercussions of maybe not having insurance should an accident happen.
Right. Things like that. Exactly. And, are people a little more sue happy these days, or do we just read about it more on social media? I don't know, but certainly it does feel like maybe that's an issue. So what are a couple of them kind of must-have insurances that you feel most college students probably need?
Sure. I would say first and foremost would be health insurance.
Yes.
A lot of people don't think about this because most young adults and college students are covered under their parents' policies, which is fine, but colleges mandate that students have health insurance. And if the school has not provided documentation that they actually have insurance coverage, the school may bill the family, and it's not cheap for school provided health insurance. So I know in a lot of conversations we're having with families now with preparing to send their college bound students for the first time. They always say at the end of the call, what are some things I'm not thinking of? And I always bring up health insurance documentation. Um, and um, I I just spoke with a mom actually yesterday, and I thought it was interesting. The school partnered with a healthcare entity in their area, and she was doing her due diligence and kind of comparing coverage and is it in network versus out of network. So just some things to think about. And if a family, parents aren't watching every line item on the student's bill, you might pay for something that you don't need.
Right, right. Or, maybe you don't, we do have health insurance. So I will say that, like, I do have health insurance for my child. So when I was like, we don't have insurance, we do have that. We actually opted for the one through the school for a number of reasons, one of which was because it just made things easier. As I mentioned, even a little earlier in the podcast, I'm divorced and we split costs. And so it just made that piece a little bit easier, but it is a good idea, right? Check it out. Make sure that what you have is the better option than maybe what the school is offering. Occasionally, you might find that the school is offering something that's relatively equivalent for maybe a different price, or it could be better. I don't know. I'm not sure that this was necessarily a better option, but it was certainly an equivalent option to what we had before he went off to school. What is there any other must-have insurances?
Um, Another one would be automobile insurance.
Yeah.
And, most families have auto coverage, but there's a couple things to think about here. If your college student is taking their automobile to school, you need to let your insurance company know you're going to be charged based on the location of the college. And a lot of insurance companies want to know if the car is going to be garaged, where it's going to be garaged. So that is definitely something also to consider. Um, on the flip side, the other thing regarding auto insurance is if you want to save a little bit of money, and it may not ever hurt to ask your agent if your student isn't taking their car to college,
Yeah.
would they provide you a little bit of a discount based on the fact that the student is far away and they're not taking their car to college. So obviously there's less risk involved from the insurance company's perspective. But, if your student is taking an automobile, definitely make sure that they know where the insurance card is, because that's mandatory as well should something happen
Yep.
and somebody gets pulled over. And you want to make sure that you have adequate coverage for medical and liability as it relates to automobile insurance.
Yes. Okay. Great. Very important. What about things like protecting belongings? Do you feel like students need insurance to cover those items?
I think it depends. I know, like, the belongings that young adults have today are much more valuable than what I took to college. There's a lot more technology, electronics, expensive, handbags, jewelry, even though we say to keep the valuables at home,
Mhm.
sometimes they may still go with the student to college. So I do think it is something to consider. And along with that, and this is something that I think a lot of families, especially first time families, don't think about, is covering those belongings if the student is living on campus.
Mhm.
So check with your insurance agent to see if your current homeowner's insurance policy would cover should there be a theft or fire or flood or something of that nature as it relates to belongings. If a student is living off campus, many landlords are going to or rental companies are going to require proof of insurance on the belongings. They have insurance to cover the structure, but their insurance is not going to cover what you have there with the college student. And if there are items of value, you might have to add a rider to a current policy as it relates to whether it's jewelry or again a laptop or something of that nature. But this is kind of the insurance some families tend to miss and
Yeah.
really think about unless something happens.
Yeah. I mean, I will say when I read it, I thought, what does my son have that's of any value? Like he's got a bunch of t-shirts and a couple of sneakers. And then you started talking about technology. I was like, oh, right. And an expensive computer and an expensive phone. And I mean, that's probably it
Mhm.
for him. But yeah, all of those things as you began to list them, I thought, oh yeah, those are expensive things that it's probably a great idea to have them insured. So good advice. Um, so on a previous segment, we discussed tuition insurance. And now seems like a good time to kind of bring that back up again. And let's talk about a little bit like, what is it? And is that something that's necessary?
Sure. Tuition insurance is offered oftentimes by a third party that is partnered with the college or university. And it can cover up to 100% of the directly billed costs like tuition and fees, room and board, both I guess on campus and sometimes off campus, depending on the policy. Um, if the student passes away, if the student needs to withdraw from the institution. So this is, you know, fairly newish in the last 10 or so years. Obviously, this wasn't anything available when I went to school, but as we all know, college is expensive and it is an investment. And is it necessary? I think that is a family decision based on certain factors of resources to pay for school, as well as does the student have any medical conditions or mental health um, scenarios that where it might be where the student might need to withdraw.
Right.
Um, a couple of things regarding tuition insurance. A lot of times, we'll get asked, how much does it cost? It's usually about 1% of the tuition cost per semester. So, if tuition is 25,000, you're going to pay 250 for the policy.
Hmm.
Policies vary on what they cover. So families need to be very aware of that, especially as it relates to if a student withdraws due to anxiety or depression, maybe a pre-existing medical condition. Not all types of withdrawal scenarios are covered.
Right.
Um, but it could give some peace of mind to some families. Again, insurance, it's, everybody has their own risk tolerance as it relates to how they protect themselves. So it is an option. Again, sometimes families aren't aware of it. And the other thing I want to mention regarding tuition insurance is many schools have a tuition refund policy should the student withdraw. So definitely look at the school's policy first, and see what is offered and at what kind of point in time in the semester where you could get up to a 50% refund or something of that nature. And, you may not need tuition insurance, but it is out there, it is available. Like I said, most institutions have partnered with, and there's only a couple entities that offer it. So, but check with your school on their refund policy first. And as with everything, read the fine print.
Yes, I do know that when we talked about this last was during COVID, and a lot of people were thinking, oh, I'll get this. And that way, if the school goes remote, we'll just withdraw. And I do, what I recall is that there was a high likelihood that the scenarios they were getting the insurance to cover would not have qualified for coverage. So, if you're going to do this, you want to really read that fine print for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. It typically does not cover if there is a worldwide, health uh,
Right.
scenario like COVID. And so again, make sure you look and see what actually the policy does protect you against.
Exactly. We have another minute. Any other insurances that we didn't talk about that you think a student might need?
Um, Kind of last would be if a family is financing and borrowing a lot for the young adult to go to college, especially on the private side. A lot of those policies loan do not are not covered if something should happen to the student.
Hmm.
And so as a co-signer, the parent would still be liable to repay that debt. And so if you're borrowing a lot in the private loan arena, you might want to look at a very inexpensive term life insurance policy should something unforeseen happen.
Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for joining today. See, and you made it interesting. I learned some things. I love it. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Yeah, same to you. All right. So thanks to Michelle. Thanks to Hannah. Next week, I'm back hosting. We're going to be talking about summer college visits, some good questions to ask from a financial perspective while you're on campus, and also how to encourage your kids to be more inquisitive and the kinds of things that they can do that might help them figure out the things they're interested in. Also, don't forget, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific.